What's going on, everybody? This is CW from GOATcast Hoops and from the GOATcast podcast. And today we're going to delve into highly defensive, but slightly different. And we're going to this is going to be an extra because we're going to talk about something I discovered. I think I found it last weekend. I was looking up a list of greatest defenders, how they have them ranked and where they have certain players at. And the one I found was Hoops Hype. And this is from, I believe, February 2025. I'll throw the link into the description when I get to that. But they decided to do the 78 greatest defenders of all time. Tall task. But they did it, and they put it out. And I must say it's quite interesting. And I didn't look through the whole list because I just didn't... just looking at the top 20, I was like, wow, it brought an epiphany, and it brought me to this video because it made me look at how a lot of people, analysts, journalists, whoever, look at defenders, because I'm going to go through their list. I'm not going to show it because I was going to share my screen, but it'll just be easier for me to just talk about it. Like, if you want to check the rundown of the 78, like I said, I'm gonna put that in the description. The top 78 is a Hoops Hype column, so check it out, because they give you a synopsis on why they feel like this player is where they're at. And when I looked through it, I was expecting some names that didn't show up in the top 20 or weren't a part of the top 5 or even 10. I'll just go through the top 10. Now, if I'm looking over, I'm looking at it because it's also on my screen. But they had Bill Russell at number 1. They had Hakeem Olajuwon at number 2. Number 3, they had Tim Duncan. Number 4, they had Kevin Garnett. And number 5, Dennis Rodman. Interesting top 5. The one thing you notice, not a lot of wing defenders. You can say Dennis Rodman's a wing defender. Some people only know Rodman from his Bulls run, but as a Piston, he was often called upon to guard wing players or point guards or whatever. He wasn't really in the interior that much. He would help, but his main guy would be like a Jordan, a Dominique Wilkins, a Magic Johnson. He would be playing these guys that were pretty much high scorers and that were needed to be stopped from getting to the basket or getting to their sweet spot. So he was definitely a phenomenal player at that. So I guess he's a wing defender that gets into the top 5. And from there, we got number 6, Scottie Pippen. Number 7, Ben Wallace. Number 8, Dikembe Mutombo. Number 9, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 10, Dwight Howard. Number 11, Wilt Chamberlain. Number 12, David Robinson. Number 13, Draymond Green. Number 14, Rudy Gobert. Number 15, Michael Jordan. Number 16, Gary Payton. Number 17, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 18, Mark Eden. Number 19, Kawhi Leonard. Number 20, Bobby Jones. So you hear those names, and most of them have one thing in common. They're interior defenders. I was shocked that Jordan was so low at 15, but I get it. Nobody's ever going to say Jordan was the greatest defender. I think he's this top-notch elite defender, but he's nowhere near the greatest defender. On the wing, wherever you have him, he's not the greatest defender. We know that. But I was just it threw me off him being 15. And we also got Gary Payton and Kawhi Leonard and, of course, Scottie Pippen. So looking at that, if we're counting Dennis Rodman as a wing defender, that's only 5 wing defenders in the top 20. Now, I didn't even go down any further. But as you know, your Forever King didn't make it. One of the most versatile defenders of all time. LeBron James didn't make the top 20. Kobe Bryant, a 9-time all-defensive first team, didn't make it. So it harkened the question for me, why don't wing defenders get as much love as big men? And I get it. Bill Russell, phenomenal defender. I'm absolutely feel they got that right. Hakeem, I can live with that number 2. I think Duncan really better. That's just me and my bias, but I'm fine with those two being the top 3. Of course, then you had at number 4, Kevin Garnett, so forth and so on. So this is why I came to this topic, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to break it down the best I can, and hopefully you'll take something from it and really let me know what you think about wing defenders not being that prevalent in the top 20. When you think of DPOIs, especially when it started, that's kind of who was a representative of those, or of that award, was wing players. But as we know, Bill Russell, Wilt, Kareem, a lot of those guys, the Defensive Player of the Year didn't come around to the 82-83 season. So it predates a lot of their prime years, or all their prime years for most of those guys. So, of course, they would probably have racked up, so many of them that it would have been pointless for them to even have to judge, because they would have pretty much known who was getting it each year, because those guys were top-notch defenders, as we know. But with that said, let me give my thoughts on why wing defenders don't get as much love as big men, and why the big men get so much love when it comes to defense. So you guys, let's enjoy the ride together. And like I said, please let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. But first, if you could help the channel out, please like and subscribe. We are right now, the algorithm is a little bit not happy or not friendly with some of us smaller channels. And the only way for us to really get out there is for you guys to like the videos, watch them, and if you want to, subscribe. I really hope you guys enjoy this stuff, so I would love to have you guys subscribe and then hit the notification bell so you can get my stuff. I try to vary my stuff. I don't do the same topics over and over and over, or at least I try not to. So if you enjoy basketball analysis, if you enjoy basketball breakdowns, comparisons, stuff of that nature, please subscribe to the channel and come back when you see the next GOATcast Hoops video. And also, if you can see the logo, please subscribe to the GOATcast podcast, where it's not just me talking. You don't have to look at my ugly mug. We got a whole host of people. We got my man King Speech Rowe, my co-host Big Nige, Ron Dog, Hawk, JB, others that are going to join up with us soon. So go over there and check us out. Also, every Wednesdays on the GOATcast podcast, we watch a game in playback or on playback. We do that with other content creators. Casual Reacts. If you don't know him, look him up, subscribe. Hey, Johnny from GOAT James Kingdom, a guy a lot of people probably know. And we just watch basketball. We break it down. We talk it. It's not a debate show. We're not talking the GOATs, whatever. We're just talking current basketball and what's going on our TV screens. So come join us on playback.tv/casual every Wednesdays, where you'll see us all watching whatever's current in the NBA and just shoot the breeze together. And you guys can come up and let us know how you feel about the games and talk to us through these games. So it's very interactive. So please come join that. Check out the other channels. And let's get into this. Why don't wing defenders get much love when it comes to defense? So I know if you follow basketball enough, you start noticing a pattern. When people talk about great defenders, the conversation almost always starts with big man. And I don't know why. I do know why, and that's what I'm going to tell you, but it's just ends that way. You always seem to go to your Hakeems, your Duncans, your Bill Russells. Those guys just have some type of, when it comes to talking defense, those guys are the cream of the crop. Bill Russell, Hakeem Olajuwon, Dikembe Mutombo, Ben Wallace, Rudy Gobert. Even in modern debates, it's still about the paint. Who blocks shots? Who controls the glass? Who alters everything around the rim? We're talking about Wemby now and how he'll probably be Defensive Player of the Year for the next decade or so. So big men just have that advantage when it comes to defense because let me not even get into that. Let's keep going. So what about wing defenders, the guys who fight over screens, chase shooters, throw pin downs, and switch onto 3 or 4 positions every night? Players like Scottie Pippen, Kawhi Leonard, Andre Iguodala, they've been absolutely essential to elite defenses. Yet historically, those players rarely get the same love. They get respect, yes, but not centerpiece recognition. Why is that? It really comes down to 3 overlapping reasons, I think. Visibility and counting stats. Big men get easy to see defensive stats, like blocks and rebounds. Wings don't. Narratives and awards. Defensive awards and media stories are built around the anchor role, which almost always means the big man. And measurement and analytics. For decades, we didn't even have the tools to measure what wings do well on defense. So let's unpack all 3 with data, as always on my channel, context, and some examples. And you'll see why this imbalance exists and how it's slowly changing today. The simplest and most powerful reason bigs get more credit on defense is what they do is loud. A 7-footer who sends a layup into the 3rd row or grabs 15 rebounds is doing something the human eye and the box score both recognize immediately. Wing defenders, their best work is often invisible. If you play basketball, you know it. They prevent shots from even happening. They deny stars preferred catch spot. They force an extra pass that eats the shot clock. That's excellent defense, but it doesn't show up in any stat the average fan or voter sees. Historically, the NBA rewarded players for what's visible: points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. Look at the Defensive Player of the Year winners list. From the award's inception in 1983 until the mid-2010s, almost every winner was a center or power forward, and we went through Hoops Hype's top 20. Almost all of those guys were centers or power forwards, or a good chunk of them were. The first non-big to win was Sidney Moncrief. Actually, he was the first DPOY. Won the first 2, 83, 84. And after that, you had Michael Cooper, you had Michael Jordan, you had Alvin Robinson. So the first couple of years was good for the Wings. The Wings were eating. And then later in the 90s, you had, Gary Payton. But after that, you throw in Ron Artest in there. You throw in, of course, Kawhi Leonard, won 2 of them. You have Marcus Smart. I'm probably forgetting somebody else, but the gist of it is mostly it was a big man award. We saw last year, Evan Mobley. And if Evan Mobley didn't get gifted that because of Wemby's unfortunate ailment, Wemby would have won that. 7'5" guy, because you can see what he's doing. But you look at the bigs that won: Mark Eaton, Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Dikembe Mutombo, Ben Wallace, Dwight Howard, Rudy Gobert. Why did they win? And they continue to win? Because they had box score backing. Blocks per game, defensive rebounds per game, those are tangible, digestible numbers that show dominance. Fans can see them. We can see them. Commentators can quote them. And voters can point them out. I mean, that's really what it's about. Meanwhile, a wing might hold an all-star score to 5 for 17 shooting, force 5 passes out of a pick and roll, and never gamble for a steal. The box score, 0 steals, 1 rebound. It looks like they did nothing, when in reality, they locked up the opponent's offensive hub. We've seen it plenty. So if you think about it, wing defense lives in the negative space. The shots that didn't happen, the passes that weren't made, Traditional box scores aren't designed to reward absence. Blocks and rebounds are proof. Great positioning is faith. As long as public recognition depends on numbers, big men whose impact produces visible, accountable outcomes will always seem more valuable defensively than wings whose excellence hides in the shadows. Basically, it can show up on the box score, but it shows up in another player's box score. And you could say, hey, he just had a bad shooting night, because the box score doesn't tell you that this guy was playing excellent defense on him. It just says he was 4 for 15. The second big reason is about how we talk about defense, the narratives we build around it. For decades, the language of NBA defense has been built around the anchor metaphor. Every good defensive team, we say, needs an anchor, someone who holds everything together, protects the rim, calls coverages, and cleans up everyone's mistakes. That image naturally fits a center. Am I wrong? It's hard to imagine a wing being the anchor because they aren't literally stationed at the rim as the last line of defense. The anchor bias has shaped how voters think about defense for almost 40 years. Defensive Player of the Year, all defensive teams, these awards have long leaned toward interior players because they're seen as a defensive foundation. Take a look at DPOY winners again. Big men dominate the list. You just said that. Between 1983 and 2015, even during the 1990s, when wing defense arguably reached its artistic peak with players like Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, later Doug Christie, redefining perimeter pressure, Raja Bell, we can go on, the award went mostly to bigs. Kembe Mutombo won 3 times in the 90s. Alonzo Mourning won twice. Ben Wallace started dominating the 2000s. This isn't because wings weren't elite defenders. It's because the story of defense was defined around rim protection and shot blocking. Here's what happens. A big man blocks 3 shots a night. Easy story. He controls the paint. A wing deflects 8 passes, contains 15 ball screens, and forces 5 bad shots that don't count as blocks. No headline, no simple stat. It's also easier to visualize what a rim protector does. Everyone sees the block, but when Kawhi Leonard shades James Harden away from his step back 3, that's subtle. It doesn't register as an event, even though it's elite defense. The media environment, they, amplify the bias. Highlights, SportsCenter clips, post-game graphics, they all feed audience event. Wing defense, by contrast, is a continuous activity. It's a lot of effort. It's 100 micro adjustments per game. Body angles, anticipation, footwork. You can't wrap that into a 10-second clip. Even coaches and players talk about defense in anchor-centric terms. He communicates. He's our backbone. He protects us. All those phrases point inward toward the rim. So when awards voting happens, the voters subconsciously follow that script. They pick the big man whose presence defines the defense. That's why historically, even elite wing defenders have been more likely to be recognized as specialists rather than franchise-defining defenders. Scottie Pippen and Bruce Bowen were called elite role players. Kawhi Leonard finally broke that mold when he won DPOY twice. But even he benefited from the Spurs' defensive reputation being built around team structure. If the language of defense has been built around containment, denial, and switch flexibility, instead of anchors and shot blockers, wing defenders would have had a lot more trophies by now. Let's move on. The third and maybe the most technical reason is that for decades, we simply didn't have data systems capable of capturing the value of wing defense. For most of NBA history, defensive data came down to 4 box score stats: steals, blocks, defensive rebounds, and personal fouls. That's it. All 4 of those categories favor bigs and gambling guards, not positional wings. Blocks obviously for bigs. Defensive rebounds, mostly bigs. Steals, mostly aggressive guards. Fouls often punish wings who take on tough assignments. So even though a guy like Shane Battier might have been a perfect team defender, elite in positioning, communication, rotations, and contesting, his defensive box score looked boring. Maybe 1 steal, 0 blocks, 4 rebounds. That makes it nearly impossible to quantify his true impact. Analytics didn't fix this right away either. Early advanced metrics like defensive win shares or defensive box plus minus were mostly team adjusted box score estimates. They're basically based on the team. They tried to make it make sense of how your defensive value from your team's defense and your own steals, blocks, and rebounds. So again, wings whose defensive value often doesn't show up in those categories were left out. Even when the NBA introduced plus minus data, it was hard to isolate individual defensive impact because defense is context dependent. And I love context on this channel. If a player guards the opponent's best scorer every night, their own off numbers might look worse than a teammate who hides on weak assignments. It wasn't until player tracking data arrived around 2013, 2014 with, I think it's Sports View cameras. That was then when analysts started to get a real picture of what wings do well. And that's how we use it now. For the first time, teams could measure things like how often the defender contests a shot, how far away they are from the shooter when they contest, how many points per possession the offense scores when a player is the primary defender. Boy, we needed that earlier. And how often an opponent even attempts to attack them. Those metrics show what the eye test already suggested. Elite wings could drastically lower opponent efficiency even without racking up box score stats. For example, player tracking showed that Kawhi Leonard, during his prime Spurs years, held opponents to nearly 5 to 6% below their normal field goal percentage on shots he contested, roughly equivalent to elite rim protection, but on the perimeter. Also, a guy like Mikal Bridges, shout out to Kings Peaks Road. This is when he was in Phoenix, though, has constantly ranked among the league leaders in shot deterrence. The frequency with which an opponent doesn't take a shot when he's the primary defender. That's kind of data that didn't even exist 15 years ago. The modern analytics world is catching up, but it still had to communicate. These are multi-dimensional effects: contest frequency, shot quality allowed, switch effectiveness, not single numbers you can quote on TV. So even though the analytical tools now exist to value wings properly, the language of awards and narratives hasn't fully integrated with them. Voters, fans, we all still default to simpler numbers: rebounds, blocks, steals. The result, big men still dominate. When it comes to defensive credit, even as perimeter defense becomes more valuable in the modern three-point heavy NBA. So these three explanations, visibility, narrative, and measurement, don't just coexist, they feed off each other. Because wing defense is hard to see. Believe me. Watching my son, he's a solid defender, but you don't get to see everything because there's just so much going on when it comes to wing defense and perimeter defense, because it's not talked about. The narrative of defense centers around rim protectors. And because that narrative dominates, our measurement systems were built to track and reward what the narrative already valued. It's a full circle. Fancy blocks and rebounds, associate them with good defense. Media highlights those plays, shape award voters' perception. Analysts build metrics using box score inputs, reinforce the same biases. Once that cycle sets in, it's hard for wing defenders to break through, even when they're the true engine of a team's defense. Here's the good news for wing defenders. My son being a wing defender. This pattern is starting to change. The modern NBA is perimeter oriented. Offense now revolve around spacing, pick and rolls, and three-point shooting. That means defense has to start outside the paint at the point of attack. Suddenly, being able to switch, contain, and recover matters more than just standing at the rim. Teams like the 2019 Raptors, 2020 Lakers, even the 2020 Celtics all proved that switchable long wings could anchor elite defenses. We've seen a new generation of defensive quarterbacks who aren't centers. Guys like Draymond Green, technically a big, but functionally a wing defender. Kawhi Leonard, OG Anunoby, Herb Jones, Jaden McDaniels, and the list can go on. They can guard multiple positions without giving up mismatches. Even Alex Caruso, you can throw his name in there. We saw him guarding Jokic at points. So, that these guys can guard multiple positions and guard them well. Analytics now support their case. Defensive matchup difficulty metrics show that some wings guard all-stars almost every night, something most bigs never do. Shot quality metrics show that elite wings drastically reduce opponents' three-point and mid-range efficiency. These data shifts are slowly bleeding into awards. Also, Kawhi Leonard and Draymond Green both won DPOY. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby have gotten first-team all-defensive nods. Even Drew Holiday, a guard, has earned multiple defensive honors for his perimeter versatility. But there's still a lag. Centers still tend to get the benefit of the doubt because their value remains easier to summarize. He protects the rim. It's a simpler story than he reduces opponent pull-up efficiency by 6 percentage points and increases passing hesitation on the weak side. Try to say that when you're talking about defenders. People are just going to ignore it and keep moving. The NBA's defensive recognition systems, awards, broadcast graphics, public analytics just haven't caught up with the complexity of modern defense, but they're getting there. It's getting closer. If we want wing defenders to finally get their due, we need to change how we talk about and measure defense altogether. Here's a better approach, one that teams already use internally. Grade them by matchup difficulty. Who do you guard every night? A wing who guards Tatum, Booker, and Butler in 1 week should be valued differently from a center guarding pick-and-roll rollers. On-ball containment. How often does your man beat you off the dribble? How many blow-bys do you allow per 100 possessions? Shot deterrence. How often does the opponent choose not to shoot when you're the primary defender? Contest quality. How tight are your contests? Are opponents shooting worse than their averages when guarded by you? Switch effectiveness. When you switch onto a new position, does your team's defense hold up or collapse? Team communication and rotations. Harder to quantify, but captured by lineup defensive rating when you're on the floor. Combine those, you can paint a much clearer picture of who's really impacting defense. For example, these are some I looked up. In 2023-2024 tracking data, Herb Jones contested more three-point shots per game than any other player in the league. An opponent shot significantly worse against him than their average. OG Anunoby ranked among the top in defensive matchup difficulty while holding opposing wings to below average efficiency. Mikal Bridges on-off defensive splits in Phoenix showed the Suns allowed nearly 6 fewer points per 100 possessions when he was on the floor, despite his low steal and block totals. Those are modern forms of impact that traditional metrics never capture. If media, fans, and voters start seeing that data instead of just blocks per game, the narrative gap between bigs and wings will shrink, I think, quickly. So why has it taken so long? Because it's hard to change old habits. We know that. And I'm not going to get into that about the old and new, whatever. We'll get into that on another video. But the sport itself was built around the paint. Early basketball had no three-point line, so the game revolved around interior scoring and naturally interior defense. As a result, the cultural understanding of defense evolved around the rim protector archetype. That's Bill Russell, basically. Even though the game's geometry has shifted outward in the modern era, our collective imagination still lives in the paint. We see a block and think, that's great defense. We see a contested three and think, he missed the shot. But as the modern NBA keeps trending toward pace, space, of course, and shooting, wing defenders are becoming the backbone of elite defense, believe it or not. They might not always get the headlines, but they're now the players who decide whether your team can survive switch-heavy matchups or collapse under constant perimeter pressure. Shout out to Dyson Daniels. So putting a bow on all this, we're going to get out of here. I went very long. Hope you guys enjoyed and stay till the end. But just to wrap things up, let's recap why I feel like they don't get the love they deserve, but there's hope for the future. Number one, visibility. Wing defense isn't captured by visible stats. Bigs get blocks and rebounds. Wings get quiet stops and denials that don't show up on the box score. Reason two, narrative. The story of defense in the NBA has always revolved around anchors, which naturally privileges rear protectors over wings. And reason three, measurement. Until player tracking and advanced analytics, there was no way to quantify how wings impact shots, passes, and spacing. These three factors reinforce each other in a loop. What we see determines the stories we tell. The stories we tell determine what we measure, and what we measure determines what we value. Bigs have benefited from that loop for decades. Wings have quietly been doing elite work in the background, guarding the league's best scorers, switching onto every position, erasing passing lanes, but not getting the love. That's finally changing. The NBA's data revolution, the rise of versatile defensive schemes, and the spread of analytical literacy are starting to give wing defenders the spotlight they've long deserved. And honestly, it's about time. Because in today's NBA, the guy who can contain Luka Doncic, contest Steph Curry, and switch on to Jason Tatum is every bit as valuable as a 7-footer who protects the rim. The goal of defense is to stop points, not just block shots. Then the wing defender is no longer the sidekick. He's the co-anchor of modern defense. So let me know what you guys think about this. If you agree, if you disagree, if you feel I'm crazy, I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section below. I know this was a long one, but I just felt like getting this out. I broke this all out to kind of be able to, just put this out there and get my thoughts out there. Because looking at that top 78, seeing very few wing defenders, when we know Sidney Moncrief, Alvin Robinson, Ron Artest, some of these guys, even Kobe Bryant, some of these guys are elite defenders, but what they do just does not show on the box score. They just don't get the love, but they should. And maybe sooner than later, they will. I love the fact that Dyson Daniels, Amen Thompson, Asur Thompson, these guys are getting love because they are defenders, but they can also put the ball in the basket. But they are defense first heavy. Jaden McDaniels, another guy. These guys can score, but what they're important for is how they help anchor the defenses that are out there right now and help to stop some of the Lukas, which right now he's looking unstoppable, but they help stop some of the Lukas, the Stephs, the SGAs. If you're doing that, you're doing something extremely right. So we need to show some love to those wing guys. And come on, Hoops Hype. Next top whatever, 79, whatever you're going to do next, reevaluate some of those wing players that are elite defenders. Shout out to Scottie Pippen. So either way, thank you guys, and we'll be back very soon with more content.